Ben's mother was slain by an evil sect, but his own sect refused to avenge her. Enraged, he left and founded his own sect. Blessed with a heaven-defying ability that boosts his disciples' cultivation speed by 100 times, Ben prepares to raise an unstoppable force to one day destroy the sect that took his mother's life. Late at night, a young boy screams for his mother, voice cracking as he desperately asks what happened. A man, his father, stands nearby and coldly tells him to stop making noise and leave immediately. The boy turns to him in disbelief and demands to know what he means. Instead of answering, the father orders the people around them to make sure the incident never spreads outside. Hearing this, the boy freezes. He asks why they aren't seeking revenge, why his mother's death means nothing. His father simply tells him it's all for the clan and the greater cause. He warns him not to act recklessly or try to avenge anything. The boy's face twists with rage and heartbreak. He tries to break free from the people restraining him, but he isn't strong enough yet. He yells, asking how his father dares call himself a man if he can't even stand up for his own wife. He calls him less than human. In the end, the boy's voice dies down. He feels nothing but emptiness toward the clan. He turns his back on them and walks away, silently vowing to become strong enough to found his own sect, gather loyal followers, and someday make everyone responsible pay for his mother's death, even if it takes decades. 12 years later, a burning manor lights up the night sky. Someone kneels, shaking, begging for his life, trying to offer Ben anything: money, power, influence. Ben stares down coldly. When the man asks what he wants, Ben tells him he only wants one thing: his life. The man curses at him, but Ben simply cuts him down. Before the blood even cools, another assassin jumps at him. Ben doesn't hesitate. He turns, slashes, and the attacker falls. A subordinate arrives and hands him a scroll. Ben thanks them calmly, wipes his face, and glances over the contents. He casually says he's retiring and heading back to his hometown. When the subordinate shyly asks if they can visit him someday, he chuckles and tells them they can, if they get bored enough to find him. He then casually shares the location: Hubei Province, Hualong County. Just like that, he steps away from the Murim Alliance, leaving a mountain of corpses and a legendary reputation behind. Later, on a small riverboat, Ben leans back and laughs to himself. 12 years of struggle, battles, and bloodshed, and now he finally has enough money and reputation to start his own sect. He can't contain his excitement, and the boatman looks at him like he's lost his mind. Ben apologizes and explains that he's on his way to finalize the purchase of a manor for his sect headquarters. The boatman nervously comments that the only manor for sale nearby is rumored to be haunted, then quickly wishes him good luck. Ben brushes it off with confidence. What could possibly go wrong? Once he arrives, Ben sees an old, dusty property and raises an eyebrow. He asks the seller, Yurian, if this is really the place. Yurian eagerly insists it is, listing how many rooms and training halls it has. Ben asks why no one bought such a huge place earlier. Yurian hesitates, then admits every previous owner died suddenly the first night. No wounds, just dead. People call it haunted. Even guards and exorcists didn't help. Ben glares at him like he's insane, but Yurian quickly drops the price to 1/10. Ben thinks about it for a moment, then laughs and buys it anyway. He takes the deed, and suddenly sees a strange message appear in front of his eyes, like some system just activated. He hides his reaction while Yurian awkwardly flees, telling him to meet again if he's still alive tomorrow. Ben immediately bursts into excitement and starts cleaning like a madman. People nearby assume he's cursed or possessed, but he's simply thrilled. His dream manor is finally his. After cleaning most of the place, he enters the main hall and finds a strange object. As he wonders what it is, the hall lights up and a strange system starts evaluating him. Before he can understand what's happening, something launches at him from the darkness. Then explosions, cannons. A deadly trial begins, one that explains why the last owners died. Ben reacts instantly. He dodges, counters, uses movement techniques, and sword strikes with deadly precision. Even as his sword breaks and another appears, he keeps pushing forward, refusing to lose. Eventually, everything flashes white, and suddenly he's back in the hall. The manor looks brand new. A notification tells him he passed and unlocks all functions. A glowing sword appears. He smirks. After everything he's been through, this feels almost too normal. The system then tells him to name the manor. Ben already has a name ready. He declares his sect the Righteous Heavens Sect. Another message appears, confirming the registration. A crest forms in the air. Ben confidently calls out without any spirits to show themselves, but instead the system announces that it's initializing sect functions, leaving him confused and blinking. Ben marches straight toward Urian the next morning, yelling his name loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. Urian looks up casually and asks if everything went fine through the night. Instead of answering, Ben grabs him by the collar and says he really should have warned him that something like that would show up. Urian blinks in confusion. He looks at where Ben is pointing but sees absolutely nothing. He starts wondering if Ben might have hit his head sometime during the night. Ben notices the confused look and gets even more frustrated. Urian awkwardly tells him that if strange things keep happening, he'll just take the manor back. Ben instantly denies that option. As troublesome as the place is, he needs that manor right now. Urian sighs and says he needs to get ready for the sect establishment ceremony anyway. There's a lot to prepare. Ben takes a breath and says he'll need to order uniforms first, asking if Urian has any recommendations, around 20 sets. Urian thinks it over and says he can recommend some nearby fabric shops, but warns they're going to be hard to deal with. Right now, he explains, they're all trying to win a collaboration deal with Yellow Dragon Hall, an organization that has supplied cloth to the imperial family for generations. Because of that, they have massive influence in Murim. Even great clans and major sects treat the hall master carefully. Urian adds that with Ben's budget, he can forget about buying anything from Yellow Dragon Hall, so he should relax. Ben agrees, but says the way he put it wasn't exactly pleasant. Urian shrugs and says nobody's going to want to trade with him anyway, not after hearing rumors that his manor is haunted. If he still wants to try, he should head to the textile market. At that moment, the strange notification from the manor complains about being called haunted, saying that's a bit harsh. Apparently, it even cries about it. Ben tells it to shut up. He pauses, thinking, and points out that he only signed the contract yesterday, so how did rumors spread that fast? Urian, sweating bullets, quietly says that gossip travels faster than the wind. Ben narrows his eyes. He feels like he's already figured it out and asks if Urian is the one who spread the rumors. Urian nervously replies that he can think of it as free publicity for his sect. He adds that since Ben is still alive, it proves the place isn't actually dangerous, so everything should be fine. Ben grits his teeth. He's certain this whole mess is Urian's fault for selling him that cursed manor. Later, when he heads out to buy supplies, everyone refuses to sell to him. The moment they hear where he's living, they immediately turn him away. Ben keeps trying to shop around town, but no one will talk to him. One guy even punches him in the face and tells him to get lost. He adds that nobody wants some unlucky guy with a haunted manor stain hanging around their business. Ben rubs his cheek, wondering how rumors spread this fast. He tries to calm himself down, telling himself that his first impression in this town can't be that of some lunatic wandering around getting punched. Just then, he notices a kid angrily yelling at a man. The kid reminds him that the man promised to save his sister, but the man acts like he doesn't care. Another bystander walks over and recognizes the kid, asking what's going on. The kid explains that these men told him they could cure his sister's illness, but instead they just stole his money. Someone else nearby mutters that the sister is hopeless anyway. Even doctors already gave up on her, and the kid gets knocked around. A passerby steps in, furious, and calls them scoundrels. He points out that they're from the White Sword sect and demands to know how they can bully a child like this. One of the thugs tells the others not to let this reach their sect leaders and to take care of it quietly. Another agrees and addresses him as senior brother. That senior brother pulls out his sword and says the kid should have left quietly when he gave him the chance. Before he can finish, an older bystander mutters that now they've forced him to stain his hands with blood, but suddenly he gets kicked square in the face. Everyone freezes. The senior brother demands to know who just interfered. Ben steps forward and says that his name doesn't carry much weight these days, but since he was asked, it's only polite to answer. He introduces himself as Ben Woon, sect leader of the Righteous Heavens sect. The White Sword sect men don't take that well. They all rush him at once, but Ben is far too strong. He knocks them down easily, barely breaking a sweat. He tells them it's never smart to judge someone by the fame of their sect, especially when they don't even know their opponent's strength. Another White Sword member jumps in angrily, asking if Ben plans on making the White Sword sect his enemy, and if he even understands what that means. Ben takes him down just as easily and says he doesn't care. Then their leader speaks up, saying he's heard rumors that the former captain of the Murim Alliance bought a haunted manor. He asks if that person is Ben. Ben just sighs. He asks how far those stupid rumors have already spread. He tells them that because of those rumors he's been in a terrible mood. He can't even get uniforms made. Ben tells them to stop running their mouths behind his back and to face him directly. He raises his hand and signals them to bring it on. The White Sword sect fighter snaps that this counts as an official challenge against their sect. He calls Ben an arrogant fool and promises to teach him a lesson. He swings with a strong technique, and another attacker rushes from behind at the same time. But Ben easily dodges both attacks and shows everyone just how insignificant these men are in front of him. He tells them that yes, it's a challenge, and if they want a real fight, they can come to the Righteous Heavens sect anytime. He advises them to leave quietly before things get ugly. The enemy retreats but yells that Ben will regret this. Ben ignores him and turns his attention to the kid, asking if he's alright. The kid looks relieved and mentions that Ben was looking for someone to make uniforms. He explains that his sister is really skilled at sewing and begs Ben to help save her. If he does, they could also handle the uniform job. Ben tries to decline and says that's something a doctor should handle, but then a notification suddenly appears, stating that a new trade opportunity has been detected. The target is ranked 3rd grade. Ben pauses. A 3rd grade rating is actually pretty high, so now he's curious. The kid explains that their parents passed away last year, leaving just the 2 siblings. His sister's sewing skills have allowed them to survive, but recently she caught an illness that left her hands and feet ice cold. The elder beside them nods and says it sounds like a freezing sickness. Ben asks who he is. The elder explains that he runs a small fabric shop in the next village and used to hire the sister to work for him. When she suddenly disappeared, he got worried and came looking. They eventually reached the kid's home, a weak, fragile structure that looks like it might collapse in strong wind. Ben hopes it doesn't. The kid calls out excitedly to his sister, saying he brought a warrior who catches ghosts. Ben laughs awkwardly and tells him he's not that kind of warrior, but then something catches his attention. A young woman sits inside and asks who he is. Ben doesn't respond. He's too busy examining her condition. She places her hands and feet near the flame, but instead of warming up, they stiffen even more. Ben frowns and thinks this is worse than he expected. A notification appears, explaining that the heat from the fire and the cold in her limbs are clashing violently. Ben's expression turns serious. In his mind, he wonders if this might be a side effect of energy cultivation. Ben looks at the young woman and asks if she is Sonia. He explains that her brother begged him to save her. He then crouches down and asks if the heat doesn't hurt her. Sonia calmly tells him it doesn't. If she doesn't warm herself this way, she'll get frostbite. Ben asks what's going on with her body. Sonia just laughs softly and asks how he even found his way here. The elder steps forward and tells her that he suddenly couldn't contact her anymore, so he became worried and came looking. Sonia apologizes and explains that her condition has been like this lately, so she couldn't reach out. Ben checks her pulse. As soon as he does, a notification appears saying that she's absorbing too much energy and that her situation will become dangerous at this rate. Ben waves the message off and tells it to stop nagging. He's trying to analyze something more important. Another notification appears with an analysis result saying that excessive energy has invaded her body. Ben finally understands. He tells Sonia that she has what's known as an extreme body, a rare constitution that constantly draws energy from the surroundings and stores it. He mentions that the legendary Sword Empress, Master of the Sword Pavilion, one of the 10 heavens, has the same constitution. She stands at the very peak of swordsmanship. Sonia smiles weakly and says it sounds amazing. Ben tells her that for a martial artist, it's a blessed condition. But in her case, she has absorbed far too much energy, and her yang energy has dried up. If things continue like this, she'll die within 3 months. Sonia's expression stiffens with fear. Daniel, the elder, remarks that she must have already sensed it. Sonia forces a small laugh and says that if that's the case, there must be no cure after all. Her younger brother immediately yells that she shouldn't say that and insists she's not like the others who gave up. But the elder admits even medicine won't do much. Ben agrees and tells them that even if medicine helps temporarily, the symptoms will come back worse. He begins thinking. The key is yang energy. They need a way to replenish it gradually. Right then, a notification appears mentioning essence water, stating that he will obtain it upon quest completion and that it can be used to boost a sect member's recovery rate. Another notification follows with details. Recovery effect, minor. Increases health and inner energy recovery rate of sect members. Cost, 50 essence water. Usable immediately. Then another message pops up with a mission. Quest, recruit your first disciple. Reward, 50 essence water. Ben connects the dots immediately. If he manages to treat Sonia, he'll also naturally secure his first disciple. 2 birds with 1 stone, a perfect solution. Ben tells Sonia that he isn't completely certain, but he thinks he's found a way to help her. He extends his hand toward her and tells her to become his disciple. Sonia stares at his hand, startled. She asks what he's even talking about and why he suddenly wants her as a disciple. Ben simply tells her to trust him just this once. Sonia hesitates. She reminds him that she has never trained in martial arts and asks if he really expects her to become a martial artist. She starts thinking about the world of Murim. She recalls how so many people claim to value righteousness and chivalry, but most only care about themselves. They pretend they'll help, yet when danger appears, they run and save only their own skins. Her thoughts drift to her parents, dragged into conflicts and ultimately killed. Sonia lowers her gaze. She wonders if Ben will be the same, someone who pretends to help, only to abandon her later. Someone trying to pull her into the same selfish world of martial artists. She shakes her head and quietly points out that his hand is already frostbitten from touching her. Ben brushes it off and tells her that something like this is nothing if it means he can cure her. Hearing this, Sonia feels something shift. Maybe, just maybe, this person is different. She looks back up and says that if she truly has a chance to heal, then it can't be helped. She decides to trust him one more time. She tells him she'll be counting on him and finally takes his hand. A notification appears immediately. Quest: recruit your first disciple. Complete. Reward acquired: 50 essence water. Another notification follows. Contact with energy detected. Minor injury on user's hand. Essence water used. Recovery effect: minor. Sonia watches in disbelief as warmth returns to her hands. A new message appears. Sect members' health and inner energy recovery rate has increased. Ben smiles, excited that the method is actually working. Another update appears. Applying additional recovery effect: minor. Spirit energy focus: minor. Sect members' health restoration in progress. Blue light spreads, wrapping around Sonia's hand. Ben can feel yang energy flowing back into her body. Sonia's eyes widen as sensation returns. She quietly says she can't believe it. Her hands and feet are actually healing. Her younger brother nearly bursts into tears from joy. The elder watches everything happen and asks if Ben healed her using energy arts. Ben casually replies that it's something like that. The elder suddenly starts laughing. He says it was quite the spectacle and that he likes this young man. He explains that now he understands why the leader of the Murim Alliance values Ben so highly. Ben freezes, shocked. He wonders how this elderly shopkeeper knows the Alliance leader at all. The elder laughs lightly and then suddenly pauses, as though remembering something important. He tells Ben that he completely forgot to introduce himself properly. He straightens his posture, folds his hands behind his back, and says his name is Kyan Gamyong. He explains that he is the owner of Yellow Dragon Hall, and then casually adds that calling him the Yellow Dragon Hall Master might be easier. At the White Sword sect, a tense atmosphere fills the main hall. One of the senior members sneers and asks if the group really got humiliated by some brand new sect. The man who failed lowers his head and apologizes to the sect leader. But before he can say more, the sect leader kicks him hard, sending him rolling across the floor. The leader asks if it hurts, and then tells him that this pain is nothing compared to the humiliation he will face because of their failure. The trembling follower keeps apologizing, bowing over and over. The leader simply orders his men to drag them all to the punishment chamber. They cry and beg to be forgiven just once more, desperately addressing him as sect leader over and over, but no one listens. As the group is dragged away screaming, the sect leader mutters that the Righteous Heavens sect's leader, Ban Wu, should be given a proper welcome. This man, the White Sword sect leader, So Yunwang, seems more excited than angry. He's dying to see what kind of person Ben really is. Meanwhile, Ben is still mentally processing the fact that the man in front of him is the Yellow Dragon Hall Master, Kyan Gamyong. Even Sonia looks shocked. She politely apologizes for not recognizing him, but Gamyong just waves it off and says it's fine. Then, with a relaxed smile, he asks Ben what he thinks about joining the Yellow Dragon Hall. He says he's willing to support Ben in whatever path he chooses. Ben freezes. Yellow Dragon Hall isn't just any merchant group. It's the powerhouse that supplies silk and clothing to the palace. A notification appears saying that he has encountered the beginnings of a new business partner. Opponent rank, 1st grade, Yellow Dragon Hall. Ben also remembers that Yellow Dragon Hall is backed by many martial masters. Even top sects are wary of them. Gamyong's words alone hold enough weight to influence both the Murim Alliance and the unorthodox Murim. It's an incredible opportunity, but it's simply not the future Ben wants, so he politely refuses. He explains that he has just taken in his first disciple. Gamyong raises a brow and asks if Ben really dares to decline his offer. Ben nods and instead asks for a chance to do business with Yellow Dragon Hall. He says that in return, he will gift the hall with fame that befits its name. Gamyong's expression darkens. He asks how Ben can return friendly friendliness with arrogance, and questions if Ben is seriously claiming he can bring fame to Yellow Dragon Hall. Ben calmly tells him to give him 10 years. He declares that within that time, he will build a sect strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 10 great Orthodox sects and the 7 great unorthodox clans. Gamyong's face flushes with anger. He calls the idea ridiculous. Ben hasn't even finished his sect establishment ceremony and dares to talk about reaching that level in just 10 years. Ben answers confidently that he means every word he said. Gamyong suddenly bursts into laughter, almost doubling over, saying Ben is impressively good at coming up with absurd claims. Ben shakes his head and says the fame he mentioned isn't meant for Gamyong himself. Gamyong's expression sharpens. He asks if Ben is joking with him right now. Ben calmly asks instead to be introduced to Gamyong's disciple. He says he wishes to negotiate with the future of Yellow Dragon Hall. Gamyong narrows his eyes, then eventually agrees. He tells Ben that he will send his disciple to Ben's sect, and whether the deal proceeds will be up to that disciple's judgment. He warns that if the Righteous Heavens sect ever disappoints him, Ben will have to take responsibility. Ben just replies that there's no need to worry. With that, Gamyong rises and orders his men to bring in silk. Suddenly, many Yellow Dragon Hall disciples file in, carrying bundles of exquisite silk. Ben can't help feeling excited, seeing such a high-level resource laying before him. Since he is already out, Gamyong decides to visit an old friend. He gets into his carriage and tells his subordinates he wants to stop by the Evil Path Alliance. He says he wants to have a drink with its leader. Meanwhile, Ben finally gets to try on his new uniform, the Righteous Heavens robe. A notification appears, saying both his dignity and charm have increased. He admires himself, saying he looks good. Sonia and her little brother are also delighted to see him so happy. Ben admits that this is his first time wearing such high-quality silk. He says it's so comfortable that he can move around freely without any restriction. Another system window pops up, giving him a choice between 3 rewards: Advanced Sorcery Counter Text, Advanced Miracle Medicine of Talent, Exclusive Trait Unlock. Ben thinks all 3 options are great, especially the first 2, but he eventually chooses Exclusive Trait Unlock. This unlock allows him to see and awaken the traits of his disciples. He checks Sonia's profile. She's noted to be born with incredibly strong energy and has natural talent for martial arts, though she's out of shape due to years without proper physical training. Her traits show diligence, adversity, and responsibility, but another note warns that she doesn't have enough internal energy to awaken new traits at the moment. She needs to grow stronger first. Ben simply shrugs and decides he'll help her improve until she can awaken those traits. So he decides to start her training immediately. Sonia looks nervous but excited. She wonders if she'll really be able to learn martial arts. She starts doubting herself. What if she fails after Ben reached out to her? Ben reaches out his hand again and reassures her that it's fine. He says he can fix her and guide her. Their training begins with the basics, starting from the horse stance. And just like that, the Righteous Heavens sect's very first disciple takes her first step on the path of martial arts. Sonia had assumed she would immediately start learning some impressive martial techniques, but Ben calmly tells her that before anything else, she needs to get in shape. For now, they'll be focusing on building stamina. He tells her to hold the horse stance for an entire hour. Sonia looks worried and asks if she'll really be able to learn martial arts. Ben reassures her. He explains that she was born with extremely high affinity. Her internal energy naturally accumulates on its own. It might be overwhelmingly based, but as long as she trains properly and forms a dense foundation, there won't be a problem. Ben silently marvels at her potential. With such a perfect body for martial cultivation, she's practically a treasure. There's no way he's letting her slip away. A notification suddenly pops up saying that the user's creepiness level has increased. Ben pretends he never saw that. Suddenly, Yang comes rushing over, calling for him loudly. He says the White Sword sect has sent a letter and asks if Ben personally knows their sect leader or something. The moment the kid hears the name, he becomes furious and declares he hates the White Sword sect. He says they're the ones who attacked his family and destroyed his village. Ben realizes these must be the same people he dealt with yesterday and decides to take a look at the letter. As he reads it, he explains that the White Sword sect is hosting a duel competition and wants the Righteous Heavens sect to attend. They have authority over this region, and their leader is infamous for his nasty personality. Rumors say he enjoys bullying weaker sects during these events. Yang nervously comments that although the White Sword sect often targets slightly weaker sects, they usually don't bother with complete unknowns. He reminds Ben that they're brand new and have zero reputation. Ben takes offense and asks if that was meant as an insult. Yang panics and insists it's all a misunderstanding. Ben smirks and says it's obvious the White Sword sect is trying to mock them. Still, he thinks this will be entertaining and a good chance for them to spread their name. Sonia starts getting anxious. She asks if they'll really be alright since there are only two of them. She worries she'll just be a burden. Ben casually tells her that she'll be participating in the competition alone. Sonia freezes. She repeats the word alone internally, and her panic skyrockets. She nods stiffly and says she understands, and that she must train even harder since she's the only competitor. Inside, she is screaming. That night, Sonia finally collapses onto the ground, exhausted. She admits her stamina is indeed low, but wonders aloud if she isn't doing the horse stance a little too much. She points out that she's barely swinging a sword for even an hour a day, and even then, all she's learned is a simple chop that even children could pull off. With only 2 weeks left before the duel, she has no idea what Ben is thinking. Meanwhile, he just laughs like everything is progressing perfectly and tells her not to worry. Curious and slightly concerned, she sneaks off to see what he's doing. She finds him in the room, sewing. He's struggling hard. A notification pops up saying he has received his 23rd bleeding wound from the needle. Ben mutters that she's probably beginning to question why he keeps making her hold horse stance training, and before that happens, he needs to make training robes for her. He hopes she'll like them. Hearing this from behind the door, Sonia feels a new wave of determination. A notification appears saying that Sonia's trait responsibility is beginning to bloom. Ben has no idea why things are progressing so fast, but he shrugs it off and keeps sewing. 2 weeks pass, and the day of the duel event arrives. Large crowds gather around the White Sword sect grounds. Some disciples whisper to each other, wondering why the sect leader is personally hosting this. Normally, a duel with the Righteous Heaven sect could just be handled quietly. Another man explains that rumors spread that some White Sword disciples were beaten up recently, so the sect leader intends to use this duel as an example to show what happens to anyone who dares oppose the White Sword sect. Someone else clicks his tongue and says he doesn't know who these newcomers are, but it seems they've forgotten their place. Sonia arrives at the check-in area for registration. Some disciples glance her way and whisper that if the Righteous Heaven sect is recruiting people based on looks, then they must be doing a great job because she's unbelievably cute. They ask her name, and another disciple explains she is Sonia, the newest member of the Righteous Heaven sect. They also stare at her outfit, confused. Ben asks her if she likes the robe. Sonia replies that the stitching is a bit messy, but she still loves it anyway. Ben looks relieved. An announcement rings out, declaring the start of the White Sword duel event. The host explains that the duel is meant to promote friendship among Orthodox sects and serve as a stage for young martial artists who will shape the future. He also mentions that a small gift has been prepared. A large box is opened, revealing a shining pill, the Lesser Blue Pill. A notification says the Lesser Blue Pill is one of the 2 elixir pills created by the Wu-Dang. The crowd erupts in excitement, voices bursting all around. Even experienced martial artists gasp. It's an incredibly valuable pill, highly sought after. The atmosphere instantly becomes electrified. A notification explains that if consumed, the Lesser Blue Pill helps solidify chi flow and assists in refining the chi core. The host then announces that the pill will be awarded to the winner of the tournament. People start murmuring that the White Sword sect leader is surprisingly generous. Soon afterward, officials announce that preparations for the tournament brackets are complete. Meanwhile, the White Sword sect leader watches from above with a sharp gaze. He mutters that those fools will never dare stand against the White Sword sect again. He orders his disciples to show everyone the overwhelming difference in power. His subordinates loudly acknowledge him. Over at the third arena, the preliminary rounds are already underway. Sonia stands nervously at the edge of the stage, still unsure if she can do this. Ben tells her to remember her training. Sonia mutters that all she did was hold horse stance. Ben tells her to trust him. If he trained her, then she's definitely tougher than before. Sonia doesn't fully believe it, but hearing him say that makes her smile. She decides to try her best. Soon, her match is called. Her opponent introduces himself as Cheong-san, a third-generation disciple of the Blue Moon sect. Sonia introduces herself simply as Sonia of the Righteous Heaven sect. Cheong-san looks her up and down and comments that she doesn't look like she's ever swung a sword properly. Sonia admits she has only been learning for about a month. Cheong-san scoffs and says she must have lost her mind to enter this event. He'll teach her a lesson. The referee calls for the match to begin. Sonia readies herself, and with a single explosive strike, she blasts her opponent off the stage. The crowd falls silent. No one expected such instant destruction. Even referees are frozen for a second. Ben just nods and tells her that this is why he told her to believe in herself. Sonia beams with joy as the referee loudly announces that the winner of the round is Sonia of the Righteous Heavens sect. Ben gives her a thumbs up. He reflects on her training over the past 2 weeks. He has taught her the mindset a martial artist should have. Putting everything into a single attack is not easy. Most new martial artists hesitate, afraid of injuring their opponent. Because of that fear, their attacks are always half-hearted. But Sonia is different. She can unleash her full power without hesitation, and that alone puts her above many early-stage fighters. Ben is now confident that she'll have no trouble progressing to the main rounds. He decides he doesn't need to worry about Sonia anymore. So, he turns away from the arena and begins scanning other stages, wondering if anyone here is worth paying attention to. The announcer then declares the next match, Jing Wang of the White Sword sect. The audience leans forward in anticipation, expecting something exciting after Sonia's shocking victory. The battle begins, and both fighters unleash everything they have. Before long, Jing Wang's opponent admits defeat, yet Jing Wang keeps attacking, striking over and over without restraint. The referee panics and screams for him to stop, reminding everyone that the match has already been decided. Eventually, Jing Wang steps back, and the announcer proclaims him the winner. Ben watches from a distance, unimpressed. He thinks this guy is just playing stupid games, ignoring the obvious outcome just for cruelty. A nasty fellow indeed. Sonia soon runs over joyfully and tells Ben she made it to the main round. Ben praises her lightly and tells her she did well. She says she won easily once she gave it her all, just like he taught. Ben nods, saying it seems to be working, though he's deep in thought. Suddenly, he senses a chilling wave of killing intent. He glances at a distant figure and thinks this ominous aura is coming from that person. Sonia notices it too and quietly asks about that person. Ben tells her she'll likely be fighting him in the main tournament. Then, someone suddenly congratulates them for advancing. Both Ben and Sonia turn toward the voice. Standing there is So Yewon, the White Sword sect leader. He apologizes for the inappropriate behavior of his disciples earlier. Ben shrugs it off, saying he didn't mind, but remarks that the White Sword sect definitely needs to discipline its disciples better. So Yewon smiles thinly. He comments that Sonia must be quite capable to reach the main round, impressive even, but he adds that her next opponent is Wu Jiam, and it's unfortunate her journey will end there. He casually places his hand on Sonia's shoulder. He tells her that since she has talent, she is welcome to join the White Sword sect anytime. Ben immediately steps forward between them and politely thanks him for his high evaluation of her. He adds that the disciples of the White Sword sect weren't so bad either. Inside his mind, though, he's thinking he will definitely need to watch Sonia closely from now on. So Yewon doesn't seem pleased with Ben's interruption. He comments again that the disciples weren't so bad, his tone sharp. He then orders one of his men to guide Ben and Sonia to their quarters. Before leaving, he says he hopes they enjoy the rest of the event. If they are able to, he adds with a smirk. A disciple steps forward and introduces himself. He says his name is Wang Pal, a first sword disciple of the White Sword sect, and he will be in charge of guiding them during their stay. A notification appears, listing his details. Name, Wang Pal, age 21. A notification window briefly appears in Ben's vision describing Wang Pal's body composition. His skeletal frame and muscular structure are excellent, and his talent allows him to learn martial arts quickly. Ben raises an eyebrow. That level of potential is rare. Wang Pal, unaware of the appraisal, simply tells them to follow him. Ben watches his back with growing interest. He casually comments that Wang Pal is quite tall and has a very solid build. Wang Pal scratches his cheek, a little embarrassed, and thanks him shyly. He then leads them to a small house on the sect grounds and tells them these will be their quarters for the duration of the tournament. After a polite bow, he excuses himself and leaves, telling them to rest well. As soon as the door closes, Sonya immediately shifts the topic. She asks Ben about her next opponent, clearly worried. But Ben turns the question around and asks what she thinks of Wangpal instead. He wonders aloud how she would feel if Wangpal became her fellow disciple someday. Sonya freezes. She stares at him like he just started speaking a different language. She wonders how he suddenly moved from talking about her deadly opponent to casually discussing recruiting that person as a fellow disciple. Her brain simply cannot keep up. Ben, however, nods thoughtfully to himself, as if the idea makes perfect sense. Before the tournament, the White Sword sect leader had personally scouted Wangpal. He told the boy that he was unusually tall for his age and had strong muscles. He told him he seemed to have talent and should join the White Sword sect. Wangpal had been thrilled. He eagerly agreed, thanking the sect leader with bright eyes. It felt like his future had just opened up, but reality didn't stay kind. During the event, Wangpal struggles in his duel. His opponent, Jing Yuan, easily overwhelms him. The audience is shocked. They whisper that Jing Yuan, someone 3 years younger, had just defeated Wangpal. They marvel at how impressive that was. Meanwhile, Wangpal aches on the ground and tries to tell Jing Yuan that this is just training. There's no need to go that far. His pride stings harder than his injuries. The White Sword sect leader simply turns away, shaking his head. He says he was wrong to think someone so weak-hearted had potential. Wangpal's eyes widen as the sect leader shows him his back. The leader tells him to keep cleaning up after his fellow disciples forever, as that suits him more. Those words shatter what little spirit Wangpal had left. When he wakes up later, he wonders if everything was just a nightmare. But Jing Wang stands right in front of him. Wangpal asks why he's there. Jing Wang tells him he's warming up before his duel. Wangpal tries to decline, saying he isn't feeling well. Jing Wang ignores it. He tells him that doesn't matter, he needs a warm-up now. He tells Wangpal that his only worth is his strong body, so the least he can do is help. Wangpal reluctantly agrees. The announcer declares the start of the semi-final rounds. Sonya's next opponent is Wu Jian, who uses the illusion sword style. This style has countless variations, making it difficult to read where the attacks will come from. But because it demands precision, any flaw reveals huge openings. Ben asks Sonya what she thinks she needs to do to defeat someone who uses the illusion sword. She timidly suggests trying her best not to get tricked. Ben nods, but tells her that there's an easier method. After demonstrating, he says that if she sticks with this approach, she'll definitely defeat Wu Jian. Sonya lights up, excited to have learned a new counter-strategy. At the tournament, Yang watches with interest. He admits he never thought Ben would make such progress with Sonya in only a month and congratulates him. But Ben brushes it off, saying he will accept congratulations only after she wins the finals tomorrow. Yang can't tell if he's joking and asks if he's serious. Meanwhile, Sonya's semi-final opponent steps forward. He says he acknowledges her efforts for making it this far, but luck has limits. He adds that everyone is expecting her defeat today. The crowd murmurs their agreement. Sonya steps onto the stage and responds confidently. She tells her opponent that he's wrong. Her sect leader believes in her victory. Her opponent scoffs and says she's just as crazy as her sect leader. The match begins. He acknowledges she has guts, and then immediately forces her back with strong, clean technique. Sonya steadies her stance. She notes that, as expected of a White Sword sect disciple, his fundamentals are on another level. He presses her, forcing her backward. He mocks her, asking if she's backing down already. Sonya thinks hard. She reminds herself that if she can't distinguish real attacks from feints, then she needs to keep her guard centered. Even then, the opponent's strikes have tremendous force. She blocks, but the impact keeps pushing her back. Her opponent smirks and tells her he underestimated her, then adds that he'll get more serious. A strange, tricky technique begins to unfold, an illusionary sword pattern meant to confuse her. Just before she gets overwhelmed, she recalls Ben's instruction from earlier. Illusion sword users are generally weak at close range, so they try to keep distance. If she can close the gap and land a proper hit, she'll win. Back in the present, Sonya steels herself and declares that she's only getting started. She charges forward again. Her opponent admits she's not bad and continues throwing confusing strikes. Sonya dodges them repeatedly, but her movements become predictable. He laughs and tells her her footwork is too obvious. Then, his blade finally connects, knocking her down. Yang grits his teeth in frustration, but when he looks at Ben, Ben stands completely calm. The opponent raises his hand in celebration, announcing victory. He tells Sonia he had expectations, but her journey ends here. However, Sonia pushes herself up again. She tells him it's not over. The opponent looks stunned and asks what she could possibly do when she can barely stand. He launches a barrage of attacks again, but this time Sonia simply keeps dodging, tighter, cleaner, faster. The opponent grows flustered. He asks if she's joking. Sonia shakes her head and says it ends now. She activates basic Azure Arts, second form, Final Sever. With a single decisive slash, she cuts through everything head-on. The opponent collapses instantly. The arena goes silent. A moment later, Yang leaps up in excitement, shouting that she won. But others in the crowd begin complaining. They argue that she cheated, that she pretended to be defeated, only to strike back when her opponent relaxed. Ben folds his arms and tells them they're being stubborn. To him, a win is a win, and Sonia earned hers fair and square. A murmuring disciple can't accept how his comrade could lose to a young girl and grumbles about it. Ben snaps back, asking if the White Sword sect has always been so rude as to assume a mere disciple couldn't question another sect's leader. Someone behind them stiffens at Ben's words. It's the White Sword sect leader watching closely. He steps forward, bows slightly, and apologizes for his disciple's rudeness to the Righteous Heavens sect leader. Ben accepts the apology with a short nod. The White Sword sect leader waves it off and admits his man assumed the girl was done for. He formally accepts the defeat. The announcer confirms Sonia from the Righteous Heavens sect as the winner, and the crowd starts buzzing about how she only trained for less than a month. Incredible. Sonia runs back to Ben, thrilled, and tells him she won. Ben praises her and reminds her that Yang promised to treat them to dinner for the victory. Wang Pao lingers in the crowd, eyes hollow, still reeling from his earlier humiliation. As he turns to leave, his sect leader pulls him aside and coldly orders poison to be slipped into Sonia's food that night, something to slow her movements for the next day's fights. When Wang Pao protests, the leader only laughs and pushes further, telling him to have Jin Guang shatter her limbs if needed, to permanently cripple her. Wang Pao shakes his head in disbelief and says he can't do such a thing, but the leader answers with a brutal strike and a scolding. If you lack talent, at least follow orders. The blow breaks something in Wang Pao's spirit. Ben, watching all this, remarks aloud that the White Sword sect sure knows how to discipline its disciples. Harshly, the White Sword sect leader immediately turns, his gaze locking onto Ben. He steps up and addresses him by his title, naming him the Righteous Heavens sect leader. The White Sword sect leader narrows his eyes and tells Ben it's rude for the Righteous Heavens sect leader to interfere in another sect's internal matters. Ben replies that he doesn't know everything going on, but what he just saw looked excessively harsh toward Wang Pao. The White Sword sect leader calmly responds that a sect leader's duty is to guide even a lacking disciple, not abandon them, and tells Ben to mind his own business and move along. But Ben shakes his head and says he's here because he has business with the White Sword sect leader. That takes the leader by surprise, and he asks what business he's referring to. Ben points at Wang Pao and tells him to hand Wang Pao over to the Righteous Heavens sect immediately. The White Sword sect leader turns toward Wang Pao, bewildered. Wang Pao stares back, completely confused, wondering why he's being singled out. Ben explains that Wang Pao's personality and talent seem better suited to the Righteous Heavens sect than to the White Sword sect. The White Sword sect leader's expression darkens. He demands to know whether Wang Pao has already gotten chummy with the Righteous Heavens sect, if that's why he disobeyed orders. Wang Pao stammers that it isn't true, but the leader doesn't acknowledge it. Instead, the White Sword sect leader says he accepts Ben's proposal, though he refuses to hand over his cherished disciple for free. He suggests a simple wager. He says Sonia's talent is wasted in a small, unknown sect. His proposal, the sect that wins the duel may take one disciple from the other sect. He adds that he only says this because he feels sorry for Sonia and asks Ben not to take offense. Ben immediately agrees, unfazed. The White Sword sect leader is stunned by how boldly Ben accepts. Wang Pao panics and tells Ben he's taking the joke too far, begging him to stop, but the White Sword sect leader ignores him. He says he looks forward to the results because even the one disciple Ben has will soon be gone. Later, Ben speaks quietly to Wang Pao. He tells him to think about why he chose him specifically, There's a reason he let the White Sword sect leader walk away with that wager. He tells Wang Pal to think carefully. Wang Pal nervously asks if Sonia knows about the wager. Ben shrugs and says Sonia will probably be happy to have a junior brother. He says it would be a tragedy to let someone with Wang Pal's talent decay inside the White Sword sect. Besides, they simply have to win. Then Ben approaches Sonia. He gently tells her that he doesn't want to pressure her, but asks if she can win her duel. Sonia blinks in surprise. She says she'll definitely do her best, but reminds him that he told her the odds were only 50-50. Ben acknowledges this, but also tells her that if it's her, she definitely can do it, because he trusts her. Sonia nods and says she'll try her best. A notification quietly reports that Sonia's disposition, responsibility, has sprouted. On the White Sword sect's side, the sect leader warns his disciple not to let his guard down. The disciple confidently replies that he won't. The leader reminds him that they cannot afford to be humiliated again and tells him to win at all costs. The disciple agrees. Wang Pal also nervously advises Jingang Wang to be cautious. Jingang Wang scoffs and says he won't be careless like Wu Jiam, insisting that Wang Pal is overrating a beginner's luck and cheap tricks. Wang Pal tries to explain himself, but Jingang Wang ignores him, declaring that he'll crush all false hopes. At the arena, the referee calls the contenders forward. Jingang Wang comments that making it to the finals against the White Sword sect is commendable, but her luck ends here. Sonia replies that nobody knows the outcome until it's actually over. The match begins. Jingang Wang assumes she'll avoid head-on clashes, believing beginners rely on trickery because their inner energy is too weak. But Sonia immediately rushes straight in. He's caught off guard. He thinks her inner energy is stronger than expected. Sonia remembers Ben's words echoing in her mind. Her opponent naturally assumes she lacks inner energy, but those with the extreme Yin constitution accumulate inner energy on their own. She knows she only has one chance. She leaps forward for a decisive finishing strike, but Jingang Wang barely manages to avoid it and counters with a punch, sending her flying across the stage. He acknowledges that her inner energy is above average, but insists she's still just a beginner. He charges and attacks again and again. Sonia blocks some of them, but each strike carries terrifying force. She thinks to herself just how strong he is. Jingang Wang says he'll end it within 10 seconds. Sonia clenches her teeth. She refuses to lose like this. Suddenly, a notification appears. Disposition responsibility activated. Diligence and adversity confirmed. All three dispositions fuse. Unique trait, clear mind has manifested. In extreme situations, reasoning and judgment are sharply improved. Calm settles over her. Her thoughts sharpen. Her mind becomes crystal clear. Sonia is suddenly able to read every movement, every angle, every feint, every shift in Jingang Wang's body. She dodges and guards perfectly. Jingang Wang's expression twists. He becomes confused, then furious. No matter how he attacks, Sonia responds cleanly, like she sees through him completely. Jingang Wang steadies himself, telling Sonia that she has held out surprisingly well so far, and he'll even acknowledge that much. But then he asks if she can withstand this next attack. A surge of dark, ominous energy gathers along his blade. Sonia feels a chill run down her spine. Even Ben, watching from the stands, stiffens in concern when Jingang Wang declares that it's over. The strike lands. A violent shockwave explodes across the arena, throwing up thick dust everywhere. For a moment, nobody can see anything. Yang and Ben both hold their breath, unable to tell what just happened. Even the White Sword sect leader mutters in surprise. He recognizes the technique being used. Cold Yin energy art. As the dust settles, Sonia is still standing. She managed to defend using basic Azure arts. Third technique, single point. She comments that it feels a little chilly and then collapses forward. Ben's heart jumps and he instantly moves to help, rushing straight toward her. But the announcer stops him, yelling that he can't enter the ring. Ben demands to know what he's talking about. The outcome is already decided. Then the dust finally clears completely, revealing Jingang Wang unconscious on the ground. The entire arena goes silent. The announcer stares at the fallen opponent, realizing he didn't even notice the finishing blow. He finally announces that the winner is Sonia of the Righteous Heavens sect. Sonia smiles weakly, relieved that she won, even though her legs barely hold her. Meanwhile, the White Sword sect leader's expression twists in utter fury. He feels his entire sect has been made into a joke, humiliated in front of the crowd. Ben checks on Sonia and asks if she can stand. Sonia, exhausted, manages only to say that she kept her promise to him. The entire crowd erupts in cheers, praising her skill and determination. The announcer officially declares the winner of the White Sword martial contest, Sonia of the Righteous Heavens sect. Ben steps forward and speaks loudly so everyone can hear him. He announces that, 1 month from now, the Righteous Heavens sect will be holding its sect establishment ceremony, and he hopes everyone will attend. The crowd goes wild. They're stunned. The Righteous Heavens sect hasn't even officially held its inauguration, and yet it just defeated the famed White Sword sect. The White Sword sect leader is livid. He demands to know if Ben is seriously using the White Sword sect's tournament as free publicity for his own sect establishment. He accuses Ben of deceit, saying he hid the cold energy art during the competition. But before he can rant further, someone grabs his hand. The leader looks down and sees Wang Pal holding him back. He demands to know what Wang Pal is doing. Wang Pal tells him he should maintain his dignity. This only enrages the White Sword sect leader further. He accuses Wang Pal of defending the Righteous Heavens sect and labels him a traitor. He declares that traitors must be executed immediately. He raises his hand to strike Wang Pal, but Ben intercepts. Ben grabs the sect leader's wrist and demands to know what he thinks he's doing. He states that Wang Pal is now a disciple of the Righteous Heavens sect and must be treated with respect. He adds that if the White Sword sect leader is dissatisfied with the match result, he's welcome to fight Ben directly. The sect leader grimaces. Ben's grip is so strong he can't even break free. He finally yanks his arm back and, flustered, tells them to do as they please. Wang Pal quietly calls out to him, but the sect leader refuses to look at him. He says he can't stand the sight of Wang Pal anymore and orders him to leave. He also tells Ben that he'll never forget the humiliation he faced today. Ben watches him go. Wang Pal stands there, conflicted. He asks Ben if someone like him, someone without talent, can truly start over. Ben tells him he's already a fine martial artist and that he will personally prove it. Wang Pal lowers his head and says he will work hard from now on. A notification appears. Wang Pal has become the second disciple of the Righteous Heavens sect. The announcer then declares that the White Sword martial contest has concluded. Off to the side, Yang comments that even though Sonia is the winner, her sect leader is the one taking all the spotlight. Sonia just laughs, knowing full well that Ben was the one who trained her into the fighter she is today. 2 weeks later, both Sonia and Wang Pal are training hard, and Wang Pal, just like Sonia before, is sweating buckets while holding the horse stance. Wang Pal wipes his sweat and asks Sonia if they're ever going to do anything besides the horse stance. Sonia just laughs loudly, amused that he called her senior sister. She explains that the sect leader always emphasizes valuing the basics. Wang Pal nods, trying to understand. Sonia encourages him not to rush. If he keeps working hard, he could become like her someday. Even though Sonia has trained only about 2 months, while Wang Pal has trained for 8 years, Wang Pal accepts this advice. He says he's at least confident when it comes to physical work. Sonia immediately puts that confidence to use and tells him he can go fetch water by himself. A notification pops up. Name Wang Pal, age 21, second disciple of the Righteous Heavens sect. Strength, excellent physique, exceptional talent in understanding fundamentals and forms. Wang Pal feels like his days are about to get very busy. Another notification displays weaknesses, extremely low energy sense, slow inner energy accumulation, can be offset by spirit energy focus, innate traits, and use timid, devotion, self-control. Ben watches them from a distance and thinks that Wang Pal really is strong enough to casually lift both Sonia and her little brother with his bare hands. Seeing the assessment, Ben concludes that his judgment was correct. Wang Pal's talent lies in understanding techniques and maintaining calm focus. Plus, he has the stamina to back it up. He thinks to himself that first it was Sonia, and now there's Wang Pal. He really does have an eye for talent, even if he says so himself. Later, Yang arrives and asks how the preparations for the sect's establishment ceremony are going. Ben thanks him, saying things are going smoothly thanks thanks to his help. Yang waves it off and calls himself just an investor, but admits that because of the publicity from the martial contest, they have received a flood of attendance letters. Ben smiles and comments that the promotion worked better than expected. Yang then mentions that among the letters, there's also an order from the Murim Alliance. Ben reads it silently, and his expression darkens. The Alliance has issued a plagiarism review request for the Ben clan's basic arts. Yang comments that it's already been 15 years since he left the Bakley clan. Ben mutters that it's not very elder-like of them. Then he corrects himself. No, this is exactly like them. They always attack when their opponent is off guard. He clicks his tongue. Just when everything was going well, another obstacle appears. Ben's thoughts spin fast. He reminds himself that the Righteous Heaven's Sect's martial arts are the product of his 15 years of practice, nothing stolen from the Bakley clan. Still, if the Murim Alliance inspector sides with the Bakley clan, a plagiarism ruling would crush them. Not only would he be barred from passing down his art, he'd be facing a crippling compensation fee. That's the real danger. He considers the worst case, the Alliance showing up at the establishment ceremony and using the review as an excuse to shut them down. He tells himself the inspection will be even stricter next time, and they'll come ready. Ben resolves he must leave no loophole, cross-check their basics, tighten every technique, and prepare airtight proof of originality. The rub is figuring out where to get those reference basics on short notice. Wang Pal approaches shyly and says something to him, but Ben is only half listening. His head is full of contingency plans. Then Sonia suddenly yells for him, and he finally snaps back to reality and asks what's wrong. They tell him there are visitors outside. Ben quickly moves to the door. He tells everyone to keep calm and warns the disciples not to touch anything that looks valuable. The guests step in, and Ben blinks. One of them introduces himself as Chung Ha, a Little Moon captain from the Wudong sect's Heavenly Squad. The other steps forward and says he's Namgung Wu, a young demon of the Namgung clan and also a Heavenly Squad member. A subordinate politely asks if they should address Ben as Righteous Heaven's sect leader. Ben laughs out loud, a short, surprised laugh, because this suddenly changes the balance of the whole situation. The arrival of two Heavenly Squad figures from respected Orthodox factions could turn the Murim Alliance's scrutiny on its head. Yang, watching nearby, whispers that the Bakley clan's ties to the Alliance make a siding likely. He asks whether it's time to back down. An assistant cuts in, saying there's no need to hesitate, this challenge is on a different scale. The White Sword sect was a small bump. The real game involves much larger players. Ben listens as Yang outlines a bold plan. If the Murim Alliance and Bakley influence might crush them, then match them by raising the stakes. Bring the unorthodox factions into the conversation too. In other words, make this not just a local dispute, but a matter that touches the wider Murim power balance. Ben leans back, thinking. He says he'll draft a reply and consider inviting broader witnesses. This could either protect them or call even more attention. Either way, he tells himself they'll meet the danger head-on. Somewhere far from the Righteous Heaven sect, a quiet voice echoes in a grand Bakley clan hall. It tells the outer hall leader that he has acted unnecessarily, ordering a plagiarism investigation on a sect that hasn't even held its official opening yet. The voice reminds him that he had already said there was no need to provoke them so early. The man addressed, outer hall leader of the Bakley clan, Moonsword Bakley Chongsaig, bows respectfully and answers that the patriarch had indeed said so, but that was his personal opinion. He continues, saying that the patriarch's first son, Shaun Yi, has no interest in martial arts, lacking both talent and resolve. Their second child, Saini, is talented but impulsive, and most importantly, she is the patriarch's daughter. Chongsaig insists that even if she is female, it is no obstacle to continuing the family bloodline. The clan has no rules against it. Across from him stands the patriarch of the Bakley clan, Bakley Gang. A quiet voice asks why he ever let him leave the clan. Says the patriarch cherished him. He was gifted, brilliant, pure of heart. Nobody could dislike that boy. The patriarch admits it. The voice continues, saying they must remind Ben of his place. Let him know his roots remain in the Bakley clan. It declares this to be the will of the Elder Council. Bakley Gang eventually agrees. He says he has done his duty as a father, and that adversity is necessary for growth. He adds that Ben must learn to protect his own sect from the interference of others. He concludes that no matter where Ben goes, he remains under the Bakley clan's rule. Chongsaig bows coldly. He declares he will personally bring Ben back to the clan. Righteous Heaven sect, Establishment Day. The long-awaited day arrives. From every direction, guests pour in, orthodox, unorthodox, merchants, nobles, and hidden observers. Within the Murim Alliance delegation, a calm voice, 3rd Strategist Corps Vice Strategist Lee Su, tells his superior not to worry. He says no sect has ever passed the Alliance's basic martial arts plagiarism review without suffering damage. Standing next to him is Chang Saig, the one who vowed to bring Ben back. He replies that worrying is beneath him. He will bring Woon back to the clan no matter what. Lee Su advises caution, but Chang Saig only assures him he will handle things carefully. Another man nearby whispers that he doesn't understand Chang Saig's obsession. Even if Ben is talented, in the end he is merely family by blood, nothing more. Chang Saig answers that he is wrong. Ben is not just another clan youth. If Ben had stayed and kept cultivating the clan's sword arts, he would have become the greatest sword master of this generation. He adds that even though Ben abandoned the clan, the Bakley clan still needs him. He wonders aloud how Ben will respond to the clan's summons today. Outside, voices call for him. They tell him to open the gate. Ben steps out to face them. A notification pops up. User heart rate rising. Recommended, take deep breaths. Ben stands tall, eyes forward, and faces his past head-on. Ben raises a hand and simply tells everyone to be quiet. Then he leaps upward, his presence exploding like a shockwave. A heavy aura washes across the area, and everyone who came for the ceremony can feel it pressing against their skin. He introduces himself as Ben Woon, the leader of the Righteous Heaven sect. Before the inauguration continues, he says there is an issue to settle first. He explains that the Righteous Heaven sect has been accused of plagiarizing the martial arts of the Bakley clan. The entire crowd erupts in confused whispers. Some panic, others look excited. Yang, still holding an invitation scroll, mutters that Ben must be insane to bring up plagiarism charges during his own sect establishment ceremony. Some guests gasp, wondering if Ben just publicly admitted guilt. A mysterious figure chuckles, calling the situation more interesting than expected. Another man scoffs, saying it looks like the Righteous Heaven sect is surrendering. But Chang Saig quietly remarks that that's not what he sees. From his perspective, things look very different. Everyone wonders what Ben is planning. Ben then announces that the Murim Alliance's inspection team is present today. He requests that they step forward. Chang Saig walks out of the crowd. He greets Ben, saying it has been a while. People whisper in disbelief. A martial master of the Bakley clan appearing here is no small thing. Chang Saig asks Ben to state his intentions behind this sudden declaration. Ben replies plainly. He requests a public plagiarism verification. Right here, in front of all gathered sects. Jiang, one of the Alliance officers, points out that such verifications normally go through closed evaluation first, and only after consensus are the results revealed publicly. Another Alliance assistant steps forward and says this gathering was originally meant to mediate tensions between sects, not to allow the Bakley clan to condemn the Righteous Heaven sect on stage. Chang Saig goes silent, his jaw tightening. Ben thinks to himself that this is good. With so many small and mid-tier sects watching, the Murim Alliance cannot afford to look biased. Right now, momentum is leaning in his favor. Ben asks if they may begin. The Alliance assistant nods. He tells him to proceed. Ben steps into stance and declares that he will demonstrate one of the Righteous Heaven sect's 2 basic martial arts, Azure Arts. He demonstrates Azure Arts Transit Intensify. First technique, Heaven, Earth, and man. A ripple of energy flows cleanly from his body. His movements are fluid, elegant, well-rooted. Every strike and shift displays profound comprehension. The crowd falls into stunned silence. Whispers spread, it's nothing like the Bakley clan techniques they know. But the flow, the power, it is undeniably a refined foundational art. The Alliance assistant narrows his eyes, intrigued. He comments that this is the technique rumored to have plagiarized Bakley martial arts. Ben calmly explains that his Azure Arts draws upon the 3 principles of heaven, earth, and man. Chang Saig studies the movements seriously and admits that even to his eyes, it looks, but before he can finish, Ben cuts him off. He adds that the Azure Arts simultaneously borrows from Namgung clan techniques as well. Then Ben states, as if reading directly from an official statement, that 23 of the Righteous Heaven sect's foundational techniques have been verified as plagiarizing from various sects. Everyone freezes. A stunned uproar spreads through the crowd. Even the Alliance assistant blurts out that it's absurd. Ben asks what part he finds absurd. The assistant hurriedly replies that there are no representatives from these other sects here. So who exactly confirmed these accusations? Who decided these techniques were borrowed? At that moment, a hand rises casually from the audience. A young man steps forward, saying that the Namgung clan is present. It's Namgung Wu, the Namgung clan's little demon. Another voice calls out. A woman in Taoist robes steps up, introducing herself as Chung Ha, the Wudong sect's little moon. The assistant gapes. He knows both of them belong to the Heavenly Squad. He asks why they're here. Namgung Wu replies that they were nearby on a mission, and when they heard their former senior's sect establishment was happening, they decided to drop in. He admits that, yes, there are similarities. The Namgung clan's foundational boundless art also embodies heaven, earth, and man. The sequence is similar, foundation in the earth leading to human form and ultimately aspiring toward the heavens. Chung Ha says the Wudong sect agrees. She pulls out documents. Chongsaig asks what's inside. She explains that they are letters of confirmation from various sects, acknowledging that similarities exist and that accusations of plagiarism could be directed at all of them under the Bakley clan's logic. She speaks neutrally. The Bakley clan claims the righteous heaven sect plagiarized its basics. But if overlapping heaven, earth, and man is enough to assert plagiarism, then surely all these other sects are guilty too, correct? Chongsaig calls the logic ridiculous, but Namgung Wu tilts his head and asks if he's sure. He reminds him that this is exactly the Bakley clan's argument, that similar usage of heaven-earth-man constitutes plagiarism. Namgung Wu asks if the oh-so-great Murim Alliance would really conduct such a biased investigation. The crowd gasps as one. The letters are opened, and they indeed confirm similarities from multiple sects, and acknowledge the suspicious nature of the Bakley clan's accusation. Ben smirks inwardly. His trap is working exactly as planned. Chongsaig's eyes widen as he realizes he has been drawn into checkmate. He explodes and shouts Ben's name, furious. The Alliance assistant stares at the documents and asks how Ben could possibly have verified all of these techniques one by one. He wonders aloud if Ben actually copied every basic martial art by hand and mailed them to all those sects. Ben simply says he's already said everything he needs to say. Chongsaig, Moon Sword of the Bakley clan, stays silent. Ben tells him that now it's his turn to answer. Inwardly, Ben thinks that if his uncle admits to the accusation, the Bakley clan's basic arts will be dragged into 23 simultaneous plagiarism disputes. Would the Bakley clan really take that risk? Chongsaig finally speaks. He says so. This is Ben's reply. Then he suddenly draws his sword and attacks. Ben instantly blocks. The sound rings through the courtyard like thunder. The audience gasps. Fighting during an establishment ceremony? Ben raises a hand and warns everyone not to interfere. This is a personal matter. Chongsaig tells him that no matter what anyone says, he is Bakley blood, the future pillar who should lead them. Ben answers by asking if he still refuses to let go of the past. Chongsaig fires back, saying Ben is the one holding on. He insists Ben still hates the clan for failing to avenge his mother. He says he understands hating the Bakley clan, the clan that couldn't even protect her, but if Ben plans to destroy the clan for that, then his blade falls with even heavier force. Ben meets it head-on. Their strikes collide with a crack, and Chongsaig is knocked back, falling to one knee. Ben tells him he doesn't deny his bloodline. He admits there is resentment, but most of it has already faded. Chongsaig demands to know why he still refuses to return. Ben answers that as a sect leader, he must grow under his own will. He is no longer the boy who left the Bakley clan driven by anger. Chongsaig asks how long he thinks he can last. If the main house decides to pressure him again, how could a small sect like his survive? Ben replies that he is prepared, as he always has been. This leaves Chongsaig speechless. The crowd murmurs in awe. Chongsaig recalls their sparring from long ago, Ben laughing while proudly saying he finally managed to take one of his uncle's blows directly. Chongsaig remembers laughing back, telling him to try taking another one. Ben frantically yelled for him to wait. Back then, that was enough to stop him. Now, Ben stands just as strong but much more composed. Back in the present, Ben states clearly, as the leader of the Righteous Heaven sect, that their martial arts do not plagiarize any other sect's techniques. Then, Speaking as a nephew of the Bakley clan, he asks for time. Time for the truth to naturally come to light. Chongsaig slowly smirks. He sheathes his weapon. After sheathing his sword, Chongsaig turns toward the gathering. He declares, as Bakley Chongsaig, outer hall leader of the Bakley clan and younger brother of the patriarch, that the Righteous Heaven sect did not plagiarize the Bakley clan's martial arts. That statement alone blows away the storm. He then leaves without another word. Among the watching crowd, an amused old man comments that Chongsaig looked so worn out he almost stepped in to help, but it seems he didn't need it. He notes that the patriarch chose his nephew well. A woman beside him tells him to be quiet, reminding him that she is the disciple of Jiawal, the Yellow Dragon Hall master. Another man narrows his eyes and tells her to watch her tone, because he came personally from the Yellow Dragon Hall to witness this. Someone else mutters, examining the manor, that the entire structure seems like a single divine artifact, ridiculous but fascinating. He admits Ben is far more interesting than he expected. This man is the unorthodox alliance leader. He says he'll head out first. The Yellow Dragon Hall woman speaks quietly, calling him her first trade partner, meaning the Righteous Heaven sect may have just caught the attention of both orthodox and unorthodox giants. 3 days later, Sonia slumps forward at the gate, sighing. She says she can't believe it. 3 days have passed since their grand establishment ceremony, and not a single applicant has come. Ben keeps a straight face and tells her to remain calm. They shouldn't be swayed by trivial matters. A notification appears, stating that the user's heart rate is unstable. So clearly, Ben is not calm at all. Even Sonia starts noticing something's wrong and points out that he's gripping his brush so hard, he's breaking it. She wonders aloud how they are supposed to recruit disciples. If their sect had a solid reputation or a long history of contributing to the community, people would naturally come. But right now, nobody knows who they are. She asks if Wangpal should go out and recruit on the street. Wangpal freezes, asking why he's suddenly involved. Ben tells him instead to deliver a message to the Hawun merchant group. Sonia asks what it is. Ben says it's their method of recruiting disciples. Murim Alliance Military Department. At the same time, in the military department of the Murim Alliance, a report arrives stating that disciples from multiple Murian martial schools have rejected the combined training program. Someone asks why. Another official explains, the graduation spar is coming up soon, and the students claim the training process is unfair. The classification system is too biased. Within the Murim Alliance, schools are divided into categories. Major sects with deep roots and old prestige, reputable clans with lineage, minor sects trying to survive, and those unaffiliated barely counted. The students are refusing to accept training that reinforces that hierarchy. At the Murim Alliance Military Department, strategist Jigel Pyong explains that, at a glance, the Murian martial school might seem weaker than others. But he points out they still have disciples trained by orthodox martial masters, and their matches are usually evenly fought. However, he says this current batch is different. The Muing martial school has been overwhelming them for 3 years straight, and Murian hasn't won a single sparring match. Their morale is completely shattered. The students are refusing to take part in training. Someone asks about their schoolmaster. Jigel Pyong replies that they're trying to persuade him, but it seems he's quietly siding with the students after repeated humiliation. He concludes that after 3 straight years of losses, the man probably just wants to save face. Another officer asks what they should do. Jigel Pyong simply tells him to send out a messenger pigeon, ordering all Murian martial school disciples to assemble. The combined training will go forward whether they like it or not. Hualong County Forest. A boy jolts awake, breathing heavily. Xiao Wugang, Murian martial school disciple. His companion is still resting nearby, Shaun Munchiak. Wugang checks on him, telling him it's not his shift yet and that he should rest more. Munchiak sits up anyway and asks if Wugang couldn't sleep or if something happened during his watch. Wugang apologizes. He explains that the whole training assignment is his fault. He was the one who encouraged the boycott. Now, he says, the Alliance must have gotten angry and purposely sent them to some unknown back-alley sect as punishment. Munchiak waves it off and tells him not to worry. He says if the sect they're assigned to turns out to be too shabby, they can just push the sect leader around until he complies. It'll help restore Murian's reputation a little. Wugang calls the plan extreme, but Munchiak insists it's the fastest way to make people respect their opinions again. Then he tells Wugang to switch shifts with him and get some sleep. Wugang agrees, but before he can lie down, both of them suddenly sense movement. They freeze, then demand to know who's there. A figure steps out of the woods. Ben introduces himself casually as Ben Woon, the righteous heaven sect leader. He tells them that from this moment the entrance test begins. He explains the rule calmly. If even one of them manages to step past the righteous heaven sect's gate, they pass. The Murian disciples immediately rally, shouting their school's name as they prepare for battle. They rush forward together and are immediately overpowered. Ben doesn't even look strained. He dismantles every formation and student cleanly, sending them sprawling before they even reach the gate. As the last group collapses, Ben tells them that, of course, they're welcome to try again, assuming they can even escape from him alive. Somewhere in Hubei province, near Mount Wudong, a few people gossip about the latest Murian news. One person asks if the others have heard about the Murian martial school this time. Another man answers that their new training assignment is apparently at some newly founded sect no one has ever heard of. He tries to recall the name, but gives up, saying he isn't interested. He argues that it doesn't matter where it is. The Murian Alliance probably just chose the location to balance things out. Maybe there's a hidden master there, maybe not. A woman nearby cuts in, saying it's all the same regardless. She claims she'll win in the end anyway. As she says this, she privately recalls how Ben left without answering her calls, and resentment flashes in her eyes. She is introduced as Muzhong Martial School disciple, Beckley San, Ben Woon's younger sister. She's determined. She thinks that until she learns why her brother abandoned the clan, she has no intention of losing to anyone. Back at the forest, righteous heaven sect territory, Ben is still in the middle of knocking Murian students around like it's morning exercise. None of them are doing well. One of them, Shaun Munchiak, forces himself up and asks if Ben is really the righteous heaven sect leader and why he's attacking them. Ben explains that this is his method of teaching. Before he teaches them anything, he needs to understand who they are. Munchiak reminds him that he said if even one of them reaches the righteous heaven sect's main gate, they pass the entrance test. So he asks what happens if they fail. Ben answers calmly. He tells them if they can't even handle a test this simple, they don't need to participate in the upcoming sparring matches at all. He says he will tie their hands and feet and lock them in storage until the tournament ends, making them lose without ever stepping into the ring. He calls it the worst humiliation a martial artist can suffer, losing without even being allowed to fight. Munchiak is horrified, and so are the others. One of the disciples protests, asking what happens if they defeat Ben right here. Would that count as passing? Ben replies that they're free to try, so they all attack together from every direction. He casually praises their decision, and then proceeds to destroy them anyway. He moves faster, strikes harder, and shuts every opening in an instant. He tells them that if their opponent were anyone except him, it might have worked. They keep trying, but reality hits them one blow at a time. Eventually, all of them are sprawled across the ground, exhausted, panting, completely out of options. Ben looks down at them, asking where that fiery spirit from earlier disappeared. He says they freeze the moment something unexpected happens, and that is why they lose. Just when the Murian disciples think the beating is over, one boy suddenly rushes Ben from behind. Ben tilts his head slightly and sidesteps as if he's swatting a fly, then sends the attacker flying with a clean kick. A few more students try to flank him from different angles, but nothing works. Every strike stops short, gets parried, or collapses against Ben's footwork. Ben observes how stiff they all are. Panic is locking their bodies up. They should have the advantage in numbers, yet none of them can use it properly. He points out one boy in particular, Wu Gang, and tells him he hesitated earlier because he was worried he might hurt Ben. With that kind of mindset, he thinks they'll never break through. Still, it isn't all bad. He notes that among them, 3 stand out the most. Ben considers provoking them and decides to go for it. He tells them he's disappointed. They fell apart the instant they faced an unexpectedly strong opponent. They're already mentally defeated before the fight is even over. The Murian disciples grit their teeth and decide to change tactics. They tell Wu Gang to take the defense. They whisper among themselves, saying that even though Ben talks big, he's still holding back so they won't die. If they use that to their advantage, maybe they can force an opening. One of them says he'll draw Ben's attention, and if an opening appears, another will finish it. Ben sees them regrouping and comments that they finally look ready to fight, though he thinks they're already too late. They rush him together. This time, their movements sync a little better. Ben notices, amused, that they really can coordinate. But even then, it's nowhere near enough. He cuts through their formation effortlessly. He tells them that when facing a true martial master, the thing to fear most is familiarity. The moment you assume your opponent won't go all out, you've already lost. Their plan, he says, was far too optimistic. He puts them down again, harder this time. They lie scattered, panting, clutching bruises and aching bones. Ben shakes his head. He says he expected too much from them, that he hoped they'd at least show a spark of martial talent. He declares the test over and says a promise is a promise. He raises his hand to carry out the punishment when a sudden slash cuts through the air. Ben blocks it instinctively, but his eyes widen in surprise. He recognizes the movement, a vicious, winding technique. It's the Great Disaster Sword, a style belonging to Hyung Seo's unorthodox lineage. Everyone else is shocked. They can't believe someone would risk their life just to pass the training. Ben actually smiles. He tells the student to show his full strength. The next strike comes, faster, heavier, and far more brutal than before. Even Ben's expression tenses for a moment. This one is different, wild talent, raw instinct. He has to take it seriously. A system notification quietly slips into Ben's mind, reminding him that it's been a long time since his predatory instinct last stirred. Ben's lips curl into a grin. He thinks to himself, I want this one. Ben laughs as he clashes with the unorthodox-style student. He tells him if that's all he has, then he's still a long way from threatening anyone. The other Murian students can only stare. None of them ever expected someone their age to push them so far and still be treated like a child swinging sticks. Eventually, everything goes dark. The next day, Righteous Heaven Sect. That same disciple slowly opens his eyes. He blinks around the unfamiliar room and mutters to himself, trying to remember where he is. He concludes he must have overexerted himself and collapsed yesterday. A voice calls him Wugang, asking if he's awake. He turns to see Wunjin standing next to him. He suddenly remembers what happened. He thinks about how he used the Blood Sword Sect technique right in front of the Righteous Heaven Sect leader. His face goes pale. He realizes Ben must have recognized he's from the unorthodox faction. He mentally panics. If word spreads, he might not even make it to his duel against the Mujong Martial School. Forget failure, he might be executed as an unorthodox spy. But Wunjin simply tells him it's almost assembly time and they should get going if he's awake. The boy agrees, though his mind is spinning. He wonders why Wunjin doesn't know. Or maybe he does and is pretending. More likely, the sect leader noticed everything and is simply biding his time. He thinks back to how Ben recognized his sword energy and even named his master, the Great Disaster Sword, without hesitation. He could have exposed him on the spot, so why didn't he? He keeps replaying that moment, wondering what Ben is planning. When the Murian disciples gather outside, Ben is already waiting and acknowledges Wunjong with a calm, "You're here." It makes the boy tense all over again. Ben begins speaking to the group. He says all of them have passed the first test. From 15 students, only 5 remain, more than he expected. Munchiak looks around and realizes only 5 people are standing. Rayong, Wunjin, Sian, Munchiak, and Dan Ryan, plus Wugang himself. Ben explains the next phase. For the next 15 days, they will spar once a day against disciples of the Righteous Heaven Sect. He tells them to use the rest of their time to study and refine their techniques. He orders Sonia to distribute items. Sonia steps forward immediately and hands out weapons tailored to each student. Munchiak receives a spear first, then the others get their respective tools. She introduces herself politely, explaining she will be their sparring partner during training. Ben nods and tells everyone to introduce themselves and get along. Wang Pal steps up and introduces himself as well. The Murian students begin exchanging brief introductions, but Munchiak waves it off. He says introductions are fine, but if they keep talking, they'll waste time. He suggests they begin sparring right away. Sonia nods, taking a stance. With a small smile, she proposes they do 5-on-2 at once, so they can get through the training faster. All 5 Murian disciples exchange looks. One of them shrugs and says he's fine with the idea. The others nod along. Ben smiles and tells them that if they're fine with it, he has no objections either. He adds that this is exactly the kind of confidence he expects from his dear Sonia. Munchiak watches how relaxed they seem. It annoys him, but he still believes he can handle himself. He takes the lead as the spar begins. He tells himself that, yes, they may have lost to the Mujong Martial School 3 years in a row, but there is no way they'll lose to a nameless little sect. He charges Sonia head-on, spear thrusting again and again. The movements are sharp, confident, a clear display of solid training. Munchiak keeps pressing forward, muttering that it isn't over, then pours everything into a final lunge meant to decide the match. Sonia simply raises her hand. She grasps the spear mid-thrust like it's nothing. A subtle notification flickers before her eyes. Unique trait, clear mind activated. Munchiak freezes, stunned. He doesn't even have time to react before Sonia warns him it might hurt. Then she sends him flying across the field with one clean strike. His teammates shout his name in shock. Sonia dusts off her hands and casually tells the rest of them to come together. Woonjin steps up immediately, saying he's not the rest. He introduces himself and enters a sturdy defensive stance. Sonia comments that his guard is excellent. He must have trained very diligently. He acknowledges the compliment, but warns that the next attack won't be as easy to block. Before he can follow up, Wang Pal steps forward, intercepting the blow effortlessly. His eyes show a faint eagerness. He clearly wants to display his skills too. The remaining students spread out and announce they'll go all out starting now. They rush in together, weapons and footwork overlapping into one coordinated assault. It doesn't matter. Sonia and Wang Pal stop everything. Every strike meets a wall. Every clever angle gets shut down. Within seconds, the Murian students start losing confidence. Someone mutters that maybe they should just forget about beating Mujong Martial School because they're struggling against a sect no one's ever heard of. No matter how hard they push, Sonia and Wang Pal simply overpower them. One by one, the Murian students collapse. Eventually, only one remains standing. Wang Pal looks ready to end it, but Sonia steps forward and asks if the last student still wants to continue. The girl stares at her trembling hands. She keeps repeating to herself that they had 5 people, yet they still lost. Feels unreal. But the match is already settled. Ben strolls over with an easy smile. He tells them, just for reference, that Sonia has only been training in formal martial arts for about a month. The others gape, stunned, and Sonia beams from ear to ear. Everyone starts whispering about what kind of training could give a child that much inner energy so fast. Ben clears his throat and lays out the next phase. He tells them they'll study coordinated techniques, moves 2 or more people can execute together. He reminds them that when he trained at Murian Martial School, teamwork and coordinated tactics were the real key to victory. Munchiak asks if that means they should focus on teamwork. Ben answers that yes, especially for those who've been beaten by Mujong Martial School the last 3 years in a row. This lesson should hit home. He explains that teamwork requires trust in yourself and trust in your comrades, and that trust builds unshakable confidence and dramatically increases individual strength. That's all for today's training. Rest well, he says, and everyone thanks him. As the group breaks up, Ben calls Xiao Wugang back and tells him to stay. Wugang freezes and asks what's wrong. The others drift off, muttering about how skilled Sonia and Wang Pal are. Both of them protest that the praise is too much. A notification quietly offers to activate a sound barrier so no one outside can overhear. Ben praises the system for being perceptive, then leans in and resumes the conversation they'd started yesterday. The one about why the Blood Sword sect's young techniques and its unorthodox ties are showing up at Murian. He tells Wugang that if he can't give a proper explanation, he should prepare for the consequences. Ben says, answer me. What is the rumored young sect leader of the Blood Sword sect doing as a disciple at Murian Martial School? Wugang says, what should I do? Should I run away? But then suddenly an energy crackles right beside him as a warning. Ben says, surely you don't think you can escape, right? That chance doesn't exist for you. Now answer me, Xiao Wugang, why are you here? 5 years ago, we see Xiao Wugang hearing someone say, you broke the arm of an opponent who couldn't resist. Get up. However, Wugang just remains on the ground. But then the voice in front screams, why didn't you cut it off completely? You could have severed his tendons to make sure he never wielded a sword again. You are the young sect leader of the Blood Sword sect. It's a position meant to be feared by all who follow the unorthodox path. How much longer will you continue to disappoint me? Take down even your senior sister. Wugang is shocked to hear all of this. Then the guy in front of him says, what did you just say? Then Wugang says, what did you just say? Then the guy in front of him says, you know your senior sister is on the front line against the Murim Alliance, right? Whether you take her by attacking from the back or infiltrate as a traitor, it doesn't matter. Take her and return. But Wugang says, she hasn't done anything wrong. But the guy doesn't want to listen to anything. He says, that's what it means to walk the unorthodox path. Because of your petty compassion, the entire sect could be annihilated. Then the guy says, if you think it's unfair, then I'll order your senior sister to take you down as well. Don't even think about running away. If you choose to do anything else, I will personally take her down. Someday you will take like me and inherit the Blood Sword sect after taking me down. Refuse, and I will take down everyone around you along with you. The only path before you is the one where you and your senior sister take each other down. In the end, Wu Gang says, I will obey you. I'll infiltrate the Murim Alliance as a spy and take down my senior sister. For now, I just need to buy time. If I can get out of Master's sight, I might be able to escape, is what he thinks. But as he starts turning away, an attack happens on him. Back in the present, Ben tells him that choosing to break through head-on isn't a bad move. He says Wu Gang still lacks the ability to judge an opponent's strength, but the decision itself was good. He tells him to show more, to reveal his true strength. Wu Gang asks what Ben intends to do with him. Ben replies that Wu Gang came here to train. He explains that Wu Gang can't demonstrate his real ability while using orthodox martial arts, so he should release his true power. If he does, Ben says his duel against Mujong Martial School will go much smoother. He adds that Wu Gang should prove his worth to him. That is the purpose behind all of this. Wu Gang feels irritated. He thinks this is on a completely different level than the entrance test. If he gets careless even for a moment, he might die. He takes a breath, gathers his strength, and releases a red aura, rushing in with everything he has. Ben blocks the attack, then tells him that while it's better than half-heartedly copying orthodox techniques, Wu Gang was never suited for the unorthodox path. His nature just doesn't fit. Wu Gang asks what that even means. Ben says if he wants to win, he has to be willing to cut down anything in his path. That's what killing sword techniques demand, and Wu Gang isn't compatible with them. Wu Gang remembers how his old teacher once told him the same thing, that this is what it means to walk the unorthodox path. He grits his teeth and demands to know what Ben could possibly understand about him. Ben tells him his sword trembles. It lacks the true will to fight. The words only anger Wu Gang more. He swings wildly, shouting for Ben to stop acting like he knows anything about him. Ben steps in and strikes him again, telling him that even if he tries to hide, his sword already reveals everything. Ben asks what truth Wu Gang is chasing. Wu Gang screams back that in a world where everyone is forced to either kill or be killed, does that even matter? Ben asks him again, then why does he still pick up a sword? Wu Gang falters for a second. He says he wields a sword because their blades clash again, sparks scattering. The struggle is fierce, but it's clear Wu Gang has no chance of defeating Ben. Finally, Wu Gang's anger fades, and he speaks honestly. He says he wields a sword because he has a reason to grow stronger. His father wasn't a great martial artist, but he was an honorable man. On the battlefield, when others fled, his father stayed and fought to the very end. Even if others call his death meaningless, he remained true to himself. Wu Gang swallows and forces the truth out. He says his father's death still fills him with resentment, but right now there's nothing he can do. If he acts rashly, he'll die for nothing, so he needs to grow stronger. He says he vowed to endure no matter what, but in his obsession with power, he became known as the Blood Sword sect's young sect leader instead of Shaun Wu Gang's son. Ben listens, silent for a moment, then asks if he regrets those days. Wu Gang admits he doesn't know. He wanted to protect his father's honor, to prove his father didn't die a coward, to carry the name and bloodline with pride. Now he thinks he's lost his way. He tells Ben to kill him or report him to the Murim Alliance. Do as he wishes, but know this, the other Murian disciples have nothing to do with it. He came alone and hid his identity. Ben steps closer and says simply that he fights to protect, not to destroy. Wu Gang blinks, confused, and then Ben flicks him, sending him flying. Wu Gang yelps that it hurts. Ben tells him to get up and says the sight of him reminds Ben of a boy he once knew, blinded by vengeance, lost in the dark. Ben says that when he left the Bakley clan and joined Murian Martial School, he tore his foundations down and rebuilt them so he wouldn't rely on the clan's techniques. Hearing the name Bakley clan shocks Wu Gang. He asks if Ben really joined Murian Martial School. Ben answers that he did, and that while others were building their bases, he tore his down and remade them. He offers to help Wu Gang do the same. Wu Gang asks if Ben means he'll teach him. Ben tells him bluntly that losing one inexperienced kid won't move the Murim Alliance, but a disciple from one of the 10 heavens joining him is significant. He lays down the terms. For the next 15 days, Ben will tear apart every technique Wu Gang knows. He must forget himself completely. The process will be painful, immensely so, and asks if Wu Gang will still follow him despite that. Wu Gang asks if he'll become stronger. Ben says tells not to worry, that's Ben's job. Elsewhere, the Murim lines buzz with news. People say this generation of Mujong Martial School disciples is exceptional. Squad captains are already competing to recruit them. The Unorthodox Alliance leader proposes a wager for the upcoming tournament. Sword Saint VG Hawk, one of the 10 heavens at the Orthodox peak, bets on Mujong Martial School. If he wins, he asks a small favor. If he loses, he'll halt expansion and aggression for a year. Betting on the underdog. Is he seeing something others can't? It's a proposal they can't refuse. If they can force a pause, they get time to reorganize. They raise the stakes further. Their new instructor for the exchange will be a Wudong top talent who graduated from Murian 10 years ago, the next strongest sword of Wudong. The man called Azure Flow. Azure Flow murmurs a name and a memory. Bakley Woon, Ben Woon, and Murian Martial School. It's been a long time since I heard that name. A tired voice drifts across the courtyard. Sonia sighs that she's completely exhausted. She complains that fighting 2 versus 5 every day is brutal. Even ignoring the Murian Martial School disciples, the training feels way too harsh. Ben shows up quietly and asks if she's already worn out. Sonia jumps a bit, asking when he got there. Ben tells her that since she's working hard, he'll give her a reward. Once the Murim Martial School's special training ends, they'll head to the Murim Alliance to watch the grand tournament. He adds that there's a blacksmith there who once forged his own sword, and if Sonia wins more than 8 of her 15 sparring matches against the Martial School disciples, he'll take her to get her own personalized weapon crafted. Both Bongpal and Sonia light up immediately. Sonia asks what that actually means, so Ben explains that it means a weapon will be custom-made just for her. Sonia practically explodes with excitement and yells that she'll definitely make it happen. During the next round of training, one of the Martial School disciples stares at Sonia, shocked that she already found a counter to a technique he taught her just yesterday. Sonia casually says that the move from 2 days ago was actually harder to deal with. He nearly chokes. She's always been good at reading tactics, but today she's especially sharp. Bongpal comments that they've found some extra motivation recently. The disciple then quietly wonders if the sect leader only treats people he likes with special care. Bongpal freezes, unsure how to respond. Meanwhile, another spar is happening nearby, more like a beatdown than a lesson. Ben scolds Wugang loudly, calling him a foolish brat as he binds him in place. Wugang protests, saying Ben expects him to just sit still doing nothing, which is absurd. The moment Wugang struggles, pain shoots through him and he cries out. Ben explains that the rope binding him is usually used to transport dangerous unorthodox martial artists without crippling their cores. If the bound person moves or tries to use unorthodox arts, the rope tightens and crushes their body. There is a way to escape by releasing it with inner energy, but they must do it without moving their body at all. Bongpal awkwardly asks Ben if he's giving Shaun Wugang special treatment. Ben brushes it off immediately, telling him not to worry about such nonsense. He claps his hands and tells everyone to resume. Sonia and the others return to the field, drop back into their stances, and declare that they'll show just how much they've improved. Ben tells Wugang to pay close attention to the others. He reminds him to think carefully about why he was ordered to do nothing. While the rest continue sparring, Ben silently observes. Just like in the previous matches, one disciple pulls back to create distance, but his opponent immediately closes that gap. Someone mutters that Sonia isn't giving him even a moment to reset his spear's effective range. If distance won't work, he decides he'll just use his body instead. Wugang, still bound, watches Shaun Moonchiak move and mutters in disbelief. Moonchiak, who used to rely only on spear technique, is now incorporating striking skills. When did he even learn that? Sonia studies the motions and wonders if that last movement was just a mistake, but on closer look, she realizes their growth is real. Ben also acknowledges their remarkable progress. Wugang quietly admits that watching them improve so fast makes him want to leap in and fight. Ben asks if he's afraid of falling behind. Just then, a notification appears. Shaun Moonchiak has temporarily entered the state known as Body Spear Unity. Moonchiak's thoughts chase the feeling. If my body and spear could move as one, maybe I could truly handle anything. Could I become the spear itself? Wugang can barely stand it anymore and yells for Ben to release him. He can't handle doing nothing while everyone else breaks through. Ben refuses. He tells him that if he swings his sword right now, he'll never reach that state. Moonchiak is carving his own martial path born from blood and battlefield instincts. Wugang, meanwhile, is only copying the blood sword sect's great disaster sword. Frustrated Frustrated, Wu Gang asks what Ben wants from him. Ben answers that Wu Gang's body has already hardened into bad habits. He can't simply tear those out with movement anymore. That's why he was tied up, so movement becomes impossible. If he can't fix his body through motion, then he must fix what lies beneath, his inner energy pathways. Wu Gang's eyes widen as the realization hits. If he can't reform his physical habits, then he must break the habits of his inner energy itself. He needs to retrain his meridians. Ben tells him he's right. He explains that a person has 365 meridians, but most martial artists only utilize 70 at most. Wu Gang needs to look beyond that and find answers in the untouched channels. Unlike his peers, who only need to find new techniques outside their comfort zones, Wu Gang has to go further. He must tear down his internal energy foundation itself. Wu Gang trembles, thinking through the impossible task. Open a new meridian, pour all my inner energy into it, force it through even as the blockage resists me. A notification flashes that temporary disciple Shaun Wu Gang's inner energy has turned turbulent and begun to backflow. Ben calls out, telling him not to get ahead of himself. If that tainted energy devours him while he's opening a new meridian, it could destroy his core altogether. The others pause mid-spar, staring at Wu Gang's trembling body. One of them even shouts his name and tries to run over, but Ben stops him and warns everyone not to come closer. He says this is something Wu Gang must overcome on his own. Wu Gang understands and grits his teeth. He refuses to back down. He tells himself he can't go back to that miserable past. He has to empty the old meridians, purify the tainted energy, and force it out. His breathing wavers, and then another notification chimes. Temporary disciple Shaun Wu Gang has begun circulating the microcosmic orbit. His body trembles violently. After a long struggle, Wu Gang coughs hard, releasing a faint gasp. Ben approaches and asks if he's still alive. A second later, Wu Gang erupts with a surge of energy from every pore, faint, raw, newborn. Ben studies him and nods. He says Wu Gang has successfully emptied the blood sword sex martial arts from his body. He's now a blank slate. Wu Gang looks up, exhausted, and says that all he did was erase everything, so now Ben must train him. He can't afford to fall behind everyone else. Ben drags him over to the others and tells him to fill that blank slate with a sword path uniquely his own. The rest of the disciples cheer his return. Sonya beams at him, and Wang Pal claps his shoulder, happy he made it through. Meanwhile, somewhere far from the training grounds, a very different scene unfolds. A slumped corpse hangs upside down from a tree. Namgung Wu crouches beside it and remarks that the body looks completely drained. The woman traveling with him coldly tells him to shut up. Namgung examines the victim and notes the rope marks on the neck. This is definitely one of the people they've been tracking. The woman clicks her tongue, irritated, asking if they've lost the culprit again. Namgung shakes his head. There's still no common trait among the victims. Apparently anything human is enough. The kills are sloppy, too sloppy for unorthodox sex or the demonic cult. He says they can't rule out a sadist, but the most likely culprit is a demon. Not a high-level one, since the body count is low, but its ability to leave no trace suggests it has intelligence. He asks if they should call for backup. The woman refuses. She says they can't wait and allow more victims. If the captain were here, that's what he would say as well. She decides they'll continue tracking. Namgung offers no objections. Orders are orders, though he mutters that missions like this tend to end in death. Just in case, he decides to buy some insurance. He scribbles a note. If gone for more than a month, please contact the Righteous Heaven Sect leader. Far away, Ben pauses mid-thought. He mutters that he has a bad feeling. Ben tells his disciples that they've all worked hard over the past 2 weeks. Sure, he says, there are still a couple of fools who can't quite get things right, but overall they should definitely feel their skills improving. He mentions how Sonya and Wang Pal managed to secure 8 victories, and as promised, he'll take them to forge their named weapons. He reminds them to be proud, then adds that at this pace, he expects they'll handle the second training just fine. He announces the next step. This time, they'll be taking each other down. A scene shifts. Someone handles a letter stamped with Murim Alliance 2nd Strategy Corps. He asks if Ben knows that missing person cases have suddenly spiked around the region and across Hunan lately. Another person chimes in and says the issue isn't just the disappearances. The bodies that are discovered are in a gruesome state. Most of the victims seem to be ordinary civilians traveling alone. Ben, reviewing the letter, comments that it sounds like the work of a serial killer or possibly a demon. He asks how the Murim Alliance is responding. The messenger explains that in Hunan, they've dispatched Namgung Wu and Taoist Chung Ha. Meanwhile, Hubei will be handled by the ferocious Tiger Squad. Hearing those names, Ben finally understands why he saw those two earlier. He says that if it's those two on the job, there shouldn't be much to worry about. Chung-ha is strong, and Nam-gung-woo is good at adapting. Even among the heavenly squad, the pair works incredibly well together. Ben says that's a relief, no need to send additional forces for now. Even so, he keeps thinking about it, feeling like something is still off. He mutters that demons always bring back bad memories. Someone asks when he plans to notify Murim Martial School, but before he can answer, several disciples burst in mid-fight. Someone barks at them, asking where they think they're running off to. One says he wasn't running. Another complains that the guy beside him dodged without any regard for his safety. Ben checks if the wounded one is okay. The disciple groans that he'll survive, though it clearly hurts. The group continues to argue, shouting at each other for behaving like idiots in front of a guest. The messenger asks if Ben even realizes who's currently teaching at Murim Martial School. He says Chung Ryu, the Thai warrior, has stepped in. Ben's expression stiffens. He repeats the name to confirm Chung Ryu, one of the strongest of the rising generation, some even saying he was close to becoming the world's strongest. Ben mutters that the man is personally teaching. That's unexpected. He thinks to himself that Chung Ryu is the type of genius who learns everything easily. Usually, people like him aren't suited for teaching. Were there really that many hidden gems among the Murim Martial School this year? Some of the disciples slump and apologize, saying they're sorry they don't have that kind of talent. One of them quietly asks if Ben will be okay, since those people seem strange. Ben waves off their concern. He tells them not to worry. During his 4 years at Murim Martial School, he always faced Chung Ryu in the finals, and not once did he lose. Not even a single time. The disciples start murmuring, wondering who exactly he was back then. Ben casually asks if he never mentioned it before. He explains that back then, they called him the White Sword Dragon, though it's been 11 years since he graduated. The moment they hear the title, the disciples freeze. Their eyes practically pop out as they whisper, could he be the former Heavenly Squad leader? The legendary senior martial artist? They immediately declare that from now on, they'll follow him without doubt. Ben snorts and tells them to stop overreacting. That was the past. He's simply the righteous heaven sect leader now. He can't believe they've been doubting him this whole time. Still, he tells them he's satisfied. They've all done well over the past month and followed his teachings far better than he expected. But then he asks if they think it's about time they got some rest. The disciples instantly object, saying they can still keep going. Ben snaps at them to shut up and listen, and they quickly fall in line. One of them cautiously mentions something strange, that no matter how intense their training is, by the next morning, their wounds always seem to recover unusually fast. Ben glances at his system window. He knows it's because they're temporarily registered under him and were granted increased recovery. But out loud, he simply says that rest is still necessary. There's another month left, and mental fatigue is just as important as the physical. He declares that today is their rest day and suggests they visit Yang's Dongting Lake. It would be a good experience for any martial artist. The disciples immediately brighten up and cheer in agreement. Before dismissing them, he adds one more reminder. Since they are now temporarily affiliated with the Righteous Heaven sect, if they cause trouble outside, well, he'll make sure they crawl back to the Murim Alliance on all fours. The disciples nod nervously and say they'll remember his warning. Soon, they arrive at Dongting Lake. One of them sighs that it would have been nice if Sonia and Wangpal came too. Another reminds them that even if they want to explore, they can't stay long, so they should plan properly. Of course, nobody listens. They immediately bolt off yelling, first stop, Dongting Lake Specialty, the Falling Flower House. Let's eat. When they reach the restaurant, the staff apologizes. He tells them the first and second floors are packed. There is a third floor, but it's reserved for high-ranking martial artists, and it's definitely not cheap. The disciples don't even wait for him to finish. They wave him off with a collective nope and turn to leave. The waiter tries to get another word in, but they tell him to quit whining and decide to look elsewhere. Before they get far, a mysterious woman approaches. She asks how about she treats them under one condition. She wants information about Ben Woon, the man teaching them. The disciples stiffen and ask who she is. They notice her clear blue eyes. She taps an earpiece and murmurs, Jawul, I found the target. She thinks back. When she first heard the Yellow Dragon Hall Master talk about Ben, she assumed he was exaggerating. But when she saw Ben at the Righteous Heaven Sect's opening ceremony, his entrance left a strong impression, strong enough that she wanted to meet him on equal footing. So she made plans. She figured she would first open a cloth shop nearby, build a reputation, then approach him afterward. She says confidently she's skilled at tailoring, so the plan seemed perfect. If she didn't go personally, surely Yellow Dragon Hall Master would at least send a letter. But while she was preparing, she ran into someone. "What, you've never heard from him?" they asked. She was shocked. How could that be possible? They said the sect leader was in the wrong, handed her a drink, and suddenly they were chatting casually like old friends. "Anyone who buys me alcohol is a friend," she joked. Someone else overheard and admitted he thought she was an unorthodox alliance spy at first. He says her interest in the righteous heaven sect leader startled him. She just smiles and says it's because of how she looks. She's used to being misunderstood from time to time. One of the disciples hurriedly apologizes, insisting he didn't mean it that way. The woman then asks if the righteous heaven sect leader ever mentioned her. The disciples stare at each other, try to recall, but nothing comes to mind. One of them eventually tells her that the sect leader probably forgot. Her face crumples, and she looks like she's about to cry as she insists that can't be true. Another disciple grabs the first one by the shoulder and tells him to read the atmosphere. They try to comfort her and explain that the sect leader has just been extremely busy, training them non-stop, juggling tasks, dealing with all kinds of pressure, so there's no way he meant to ignore her. She gradually calms down and mentions that the wager with the unorthodox alliance must have added to his burdens. The disciples blink and ask what wager she's talking about. She explains that, with the upcoming aspiring tournament, the Murim Alliance and the Unorthodox Alliance agreed to a temporary ceasefire. Their respective leaders made a bet to see who had the better eye for talent. The Unorthodox Alliance backed the Murian Martial School, while the Murim Alliance supported the Myeong Martial School. One disciple mutters that he knew they'd be in a tournament, but didn't realize the Unorthodox Alliance leader wouldn't even be watching. The woman continues, saying that if the Unorthodox Alliance loses, they agreed to halt all aggression and expansion for 1 full year. She notes that it's a surprisingly heavy condition. However, she adds that if they win, the Murim Alliance must fulfill a small favor requested by the Unorthodox Alliance leader. It was an easy decision. There was no excuse to refuse the bet. She finishes by pointing out that in reality, the Murim Alliance is now hoping the Murian Martial School loses. From her perspective, the disciples have essentially been reduced to pawns in someone else's gamble. The group falls quiet. One of them murmurs that it sounds like the Murim Alliance doesn't value them much. Another sighs, saying he thought they were finally strong enough to compete properly. Someone suggests they should demand an explanation from the higher-ups, but another disciple stops him and tells him to think about his own sect's position. He explains that, unlike him and Shaun Wugang, the rest belong to official Murim Alliance sections. Even if they lose, their individual reputations won't be ruined, and the Alliance will even compensate them afterward. The disciples sit in uneasy silence for a moment before one of them mutters that maybe things aren't completely hopeless. A girl snaps back, asking if he seriously thinks that just because he has nothing to lose, he can fight without consequence while those with something at stake should stay quiet and play it safe. He casually says that's exactly what he thinks. Her eyes widen, and she calls him insane, practically asking if he has a death wish. Before things can escalate any further, another disciple steps between them and tells them both to cool it. Bogang sighs and brings the conversation back on track. He wonders aloud if the sect leader knew about all of this beforehand, and grumbles about what Ben was even thinking. They debate what to do next, knowing the Murim Alliance will keep tightening the pressure. Ben eventually speaks up. He says that they don't have to bow their heads every time the adults in power decide something. Now that these students have come under his wing, they're his people, and if that leads to a direct clash with the Murim Alliance, then that's just how it'll be. He asks if they'll stand with him. Yairang hesitates, saying betraying the Murim Alliance feels wrong. Ben tells him not to be dramatic. No one here is betraying anyone, and if he's that scared, he can go ask for permission from whoever is backing him. Yairang freezes, realizing Ben somehow figured out his circumstances. He quietly asks when Ben found out. Ben simply says he never really tried to hide it and asks how Yairang managed to notice first. Before they can finish that conversation, someone rushes in, calling for the chief and the heads of the 7 sects, warning that there's a problem. He reports that martial artists from both the Murim Alliance and the Unorthodox Alliance are gathering nearby. Ben's jaw tightens as he wonders if a full-scale war is about to erupt. The messenger shakes his head and says it's something worse. Demons have appeared. Ben's expression darkens. He's told that a procession, more than 100 demons, has been spotted heading toward Dongting Lake. In the nearby forest, distorted voices shriek, urging each other to tear apart every human in sight. Their hunger sounds bottomless, driven by a desire to devour, and devour more. The air fills with screaming as the nightmare approaches, asking for more and more. Let's reach 2,000 likes if you also want more chapters of this.